video we're going to take this Acer C720 and we're going to put Linux on it. We're actually going to wipe it first, so we press escape, refresh, and power at the same time, and then release. And then it says ChromeOS is missing or damaged. Please insert recover USB stick or SD card. We're going to press Control D and enter, and then space and enter. That will wipe the storage, and it will get ChromeOS in a kind of a factory state. We're going to connect to Wi-Fi just so that this Chromebook can determine its configuration. This Chromebook was deprovisioned from its previous use in school, so because it's been deprovisioned, once I connect it to the internet, it'll basically phone home to Google and it will see that it has been deprovisioned and is now free to be set up anew again here. So now it's connected to Wi-Fi and the internet. So now we need to flash the firmware on this Chromebook so that we can put Linux on it. To do that though, I'm unable to flash it because there is a little screw inside on the main board preventing the firmware from being flashed. So I'm actually going to power the Chromebook off, and we're going to need to take that write protect screw off the main board. So we'll quickly open this thing up. So the screw we're looking for is the write protect screw. On this model, it's this screw right here. It's typically the screw that has a bunch of contacts on it, 4 or more contacts that this makes contact with, completes the circuit and tells the Chromebook that the firmware cannot be flashed. But with this screw removed, I'm just going to leave it removed for now. Now this Chromebook, when put into developer mode, will be able to have its firmware replaced. Now we're going to want to put it into developer mode. So to put it in developer mode is similar to wiping it. Now because we've already wiped it and connected to Wi-Fi and it's phoned home already, it knows that it's been deprovisioned, and it knows that developer mode should now be allowed again. Whereas before it was deprovisioned, developer mode was not allowed. So I'm going to press escape, refresh, and power again, and we're going to do a similar key sequence here. We're going to do Control D and enter again. But when it reboots, instead of pressing space and enter, we're going to press Control D again, and that puts it into developer mode here. So it's going to take a little while to... It says here, your system is transitioning to developer mode. Local data has been cleared. And it takes several minutes for this process to complete. But when this process does complete, it's just going to reboot and we're going to go back to the welcome screen again. And at that point is when we can connect to the internet again. And then we'll be able to run some steps to flash the firmware on this Chromebook, replacing the Google firmware with what's called coreboot. That basically turns this Chromebook into a generic PC that we can install Linux on. We're picking up where we left off here. So between when we started to transition to developer mode and now, it actually popped up and said, it asked if we wanted to go back into verified mode, and we just let it do its thing here. It beeped a couple of times and now we're to the welcome screen. And you can see it says enable debugging features. That's an indication that we're in developer mode, at least on this model of Chromebook. So now we're ready to just click on let's go. We'll connect to wireless again. Eventually we should get a browse as guest down there. Okay, yeah, browse as guest. So it's now connected to the internet. We'll click on browse as guest. With that write protect screw now off the main board, and now that we're in developer mode as well, we can now flash the firmware. So I'm going to press Control Alt and T. That will bring up this terminal here. I'm going to type in shell. And now we're at the Chrome shell. Yeah, so we type sudo space ChroSystem space dev underscore boot underscore legacy equals 1. So sudo space ChroSystem space dev underscore boot underscore legacy equals 1. I hit enter, and it says, we trust you have received the usual lecture, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes, though, instead of dev underscore boot underscore legacy equals 1, you have to actually type in dev underscore boot underscore alt fw equals 1. It will tell you that though if you need to enter that command instead. So now that we've done that, we can now download the script to update the firmware. So that's all one line, cd semicolon space curl, C-U-R-L space dash capital L capital O space MrChromebox dot tech space, actually MrChromebook dot tech / firmware util dash util dot sh space and space sudo bash space firmware dash util dot sh. So once again, that's cd semicolon space curl space dash capital L capital O space MrChromebox dot tech / firmware dash util dot sh space and space sudo space bash space firmware, and I actually spelled firmware wrong here, firmware dash util.sh. I hit enter, it downloads the script to update the firmware, and then it runs the script. So now it's checking the system info here to determine what process to update the firmware. So we want option 2. It says ChromeOS device firmware utility script by MrChromebox. We want option 2, which is install update UEFI full ROM firmware. So I type in option 2, enter, and it wants to confirm we want to do this. We press Y, enter, another warning, Y, enter. Now one option is to back up the firmware, the ChromeOS firmware, to a flash drive if you ever want to restore it. In this case though, we're just going to one-way put it on Linux and keep it on Linux. So we hit no to that, N, enter, and it's downloading the firmware for this model of Chromebook. It's installing the firmware now. Now I have Xubuntu, which is a distribution of Linux based on Ubuntu, on this USB flash drive. To prep one of these, you download the ISO for the Linux distribution, in this case Xubuntu, Xubuntu. This is version 22.04 LTS, long-term service or long-term support release. And I use a program on Windows called Rufus to take that ISO of that Linux installation disk and put it onto a USB flash drive that's bootable. So we can then boot from this USB flash drive to install Xubuntu on this Chromebook. So the firmware is complete. The firmware update to coreboot is complete. We press enter, and then we want to reboot. So we press R to reboot and hit enter. I'm going to plug this flash drive in. We'll see the coreboot splash screen appear. It's kind of this running rabbit. When that appears, we're just about ready to press escape then to go into the boot menu. So you have to let it just do its thing. Okay, so here's the coreboot splash screen. I hit escape to bring up this boot menu here, or this BIOS menu. I go down to boot menu and hit enter, and then SanDisk Ultra is this USB flash drive that I've prepped with Xubuntu. It's selected, I hit enter. You'll also see SATA Kingston. That's the SSD inside of this Chromebook. But we want to boot from the USB flash drive, the SanDisk, and then we're going to install Xubuntu on the Kingston SSD. So I hit enter to the SanDisk Ultra, and now we're booting from the USB flash drive. Here's grub. We're going to select try or install Xubuntu, hit enter. And then this is pretty straightforward. From here on out, it's pretty straightforward. This is just a standard Xubuntu installation process, which is similar to Ubuntu. They're very similar in that you just run through just a basic installation of Linux on this. Though the one thing you want to make sure you do, though, is do not connect it to Wi-Fi. When you're starting this installation process, I found that you're going to want to not connect it to Wi-Fi initially. You can certainly connect to Wi-Fi after the OS has been installed, and then do updates at that point. But I found that, at least on the C720, you do not want to connect to the internet. You just want to do installation and then reboot it, boot from the SSD, and then you can connect to Wi-Fi, connect to the internet, run updates, install software. Yeah, so right here where it says Wi-Fi available, just don't worry about it initially. Another thing that is worth mentioning as well is that many of these Chromebooks have small SSDs, 16 gigabyte SSDs. That's quite small. You're going to really benefit from doing what's called a minimal installation of Linux. So I click on Install Ubuntu. One of the options is to perform a minimal installation. That's without any of the basic software installed, just the core software plus Firefox as well. So you can at least get on and browse the web. And then from there you can install any needed applications. So English, I hit continue. Yeah, again here I'm not going to connect to Wi-Fi. I'm just going to click on continue. And then here, updates and other software. Normal installation is the default, but we want to do minimal installation. So normal installation includes web browser utilities, office software, games, and media players. Minimal installation is just a web browser and basic utilities. I find that after you do the minimal installation, you might want to install a media player as well as a editor, like a text editor. So minimal installation, and we can hit continue. Now, one of the nice things about Ubuntu is it's one of the lighter kind of distributions of Debian Ubuntu-based Linux, and it does offer you the option to encrypt the SSD. So one of the options under Advanced Features here is use LVM with the new Ubuntu installation. When you check that, you can then check this box that says encrypt the new Ubuntu installation for security. Let's just try that for the sake of trying it out here, and we click OK to that. So we're going to erase disk and install Ubuntu and hit install now. It's now going to ask us for a key to enter to decrypt the SSD when it first boots up. I'm just going to type in password. You're obviously going to want to pick something more secure than that. And then I'm just going to hit install now. So when the system boots up, the whole drive will be encrypted, and you have to type in the password or the key you select there to decrypt the drive. So it's kind of a nice security feature that, whereas, you know, if you're out and about with the Chromebook that now has Linux on it and you lose it or it gets stolen, the person that finds it or stole it wouldn't be able to access any data on it because it's going to be encrypted and only decryptable by entering that key. So we click on continue, and from here it's pretty standard. We pick our location, time zone, Chicago. And then we enter a username, computer name, password. And you can check login automatically, because honestly, if you're going to be encrypting the drive anyway, and you might as well just sign in, because that way you don't have to basically enter two passwords. If you choose not to do full drive encryption, then you might want to make it so that you have to still log in at that last setting there. So it's just going to do its thing here, install Ubuntu, and when it's complete, then it will just ask to reboot. We'll take the flash drive out and we'll boot into Linux. Now there are a few things that might need fixing, like some of the keys up here might not work. There are fixes to get these to work, as well as the webcam. Well, the webcam actually probably should work, but the microphone I found on the C720 or the C740, the microphone doesn't work properly. So there's a fix for that as well. Another thing worth noting is that on most PCs, Control-Alt-Delete will restart the unit. On Chromebooks, though, it's the refresh key and the power key. Those two together are kind of the equivalent of Control-Alt-Delete on other PCs. So that's an important key combination to know about. So we'll let this do its thing, and we'll pick up where it left off to try the microphone fix. So the installation of Ubuntu completed. I'm going to remove the flash drive and click on Restart Now. Actually, the mouse is locked up, so we'll just restart it by pressing the power button and the refresh button. I'm actually going to put the bottom back on here now, though, so We'll power it down. I'm going to also put that screw back in for the right protect screw. Something rattling around in there. So we'll connect it to DC power again and power it on. We'll check and make sure that the microphone works. If it doesn't, there's a fix we can try for that. So it's asking for the password that I set to decrypt the whole drive, which was just password. And then it should decrypt and then log us in automatically because we specified to log in automatically. We'll want to now connect to Wi-Fi, so we'll do that. Now we did a minimal installation, so all that's on right now is just Firefox and basic utilities. If I do Control-Alt-T to bring up the terminal and sudo apt update, sudo space apt space update, type in our password, which was just password, was the user password in this case. For Xubuntu, the two basic applications I like installing are Mousepad, which is a graphical text editor, as well as Parole, which is a media player. Both are pretty light applications. By running sudo apt update, we'll then be able to install those. So it's sudo space apt space install space Mousepad, Y, enter. And now if I click on applications, all applications, scroll down, Mousepad is right here. Kind of the equivalent of Notepad in Windows. And then Parole. So that is sudo apt install P-A-R-O-L-E, Y, enter. It's just for playing like videos and other media files. And next we will I also like moving this bar down, so I double tap to right click, go down to panel, panel preferences, unlock panel, and then I can click by these 10 little dots in the corner. I can click and drag that down, and then I can relock the panel. Yeah, we wanted to check to see if the mic was working. So we'll go to the web browser, which is just Firefox. So let's test the mic here. So online voice-recorder.com, online-voice-recorder.com. I hit the record button. It wants to allow the mic. I click allow. Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Yep, so the mic is not working properly. There's a fix we can try for that. So I'm going to try the fix for that and also the fix for the media keys, and I'll have a link to that in this video here. The guide that I wrote here goes over some of the possible fixes for the microphone as well as getting the media keys to work here. It's specific to the Acer C740, though the C720 is pretty similar hardware, so some of these fixes might actually work on the C720. So let's scroll down to the fix for the microphone here. So we open a terminal, Control-Alt-T. We need to create a file. Sudo space nano space /etc/modprobe.d/snd-hda-intel.conf. I hit enter to that, enter my password, and I need to paste into that file, that new file, this text here, options. We'll go over that in a sec here. So I paste into this new file, options space snd-hda-intel space model equals comma alc283-dac-wcaps. Control X, Y, and enter will save that file. So now that file has been created with that text and saved, and we can see if that fixes that. As for the media keys doing what they actually say, like for example, the volume up key seems to actually just be the Alt key, and the volume down is not doing anything, mute is not doing anything, the brightness up and down aren't working either. So to fix that, we can download this file here, Control Alt T, wget space, I'm just going to paste that link, hit enter. So now I've downloaded this file called xkb-data_2.23.1- 1 Ubuntu 1-gallium 1_all.deb. wget space and then that link to that file will download that file. Now I want to run this command here to install it. Again, this file, this document that I wrote goes over this. I'm just seeing if this will be the fix or not. Double tap, paste, sudo space dpkg space -i space, and then that file .deb, hit enter, password. So we'll see now if that fixes the keys up here as well as the microphone. So we're going to close out of everything, and we'll click on these menu button there and then power off and restart. Decrypt the drive is just password. Ubuntu should then boot up and automatically log in on the user account user. The user account user has password, just password, which is the same as the decryption key. I just set them as the same just for the sake of example here. So then we'll go back to Firefox. Well, first of all, let's see if our media keys now work. Well, first though, we need to go into keyboard settings. So I click on the menu button. I'm just going to type in keyboard. Go to keyboard. We go to layout. We uncheck the use system defaults. Then we scroll up. There should be a bunch of Chromebook options here. We'll try the Chromebook most models, right alt overlay, F keys mapped to media keys. When I hit that and close. So now I'm controlling volume as I should be here with these two buttons, these two keys. Mute works properly. Brightness up and down. Looks like brightness up and down may still not be working, which is not a huge deal. One of those other options in the keyboard settings might still work. Let's test the microphone now though. So we'll go into Firefox. online-voice-recorder.com. Click on the record button. Click allow. Test 1 2 3. Now I see it registering a little bit there. So I bet if we go into our sound settings at the bottom right here, yeah, the microphone just turned way down. So if I turn the microphone up a bit, I can also turn the volume up a little bit. And let's try that again here. Hit record. Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. So that's working. Let's see if we can get the brightness up and down to work though. So I go to keyboard, layout, use system defaults as unchecked. Yeah, some of these other options we can try and see if that helps at all. I actually found the fix to control brightness. So in keyboard settings, after we applied that fix, I go to keyboard settings and I go to layout. So the layout that I initially picked was Chromebook most models right alt overlay F keys map to media keys. The right alt overlay means you have to hold the right alt key to then access some of those features. So we select that, close, and if I hold the alt key, now brightness up and down works if I hold the alt key. Now the mute and volume up kind of work as is without the alt key pressed. So yeah, some of that is just kind of trial and error.